Welcome back to Ethereum Audible and today's blockchain bite. Today I actually wanted to go, since we've been talking about consensus and the merge, comparing proof of work to proof of stake, I wanted to go back to a concept called BFT, which shows up. It's a key part of any consensus mechanism. Most people don't know what it is, though it shows up in a lot of the papers. That's why I wanted to do a blockchain bite about it, so that next time you're in a cocktail party and someone just randomly throws out BFT, Byzantine Fault Tolerance, you'll know exactly what they are talking about. Also because it's a fun story and just a cool application of technology. So, BFT, Byzantine Fault Tolerance. What is it? Where does it come from? Why is there Byzantine in it? That's what we're going to be talking about today. It's going to be short, it's going to be quick, it's going to be fun. Let's go. So BFT, Byzantine Fault Tolerance, is a term from distributed computing systems, where the challenge is you have computers spread all over the world or just spread all over a specific system. They can be in the same system like a car or a plane, and they have to coordinate action. And the problem is that they need to act together. They need to reach consensus on what to do. The term Byzantine comes from this allegory called the Byzantine general's problem, which brings this to life really well. So imagine you are a Byzantine general. I don't know why they chose a Byzantine general, but maybe because they were laying siege to some large city. The Byzantine Empire is the eastern counterpart of the Roman Empire, basically based around Constantinople, which is today Istanbul, the capital of Turkey. And Byzantine Empire, I think, is somewhere around 320 something AD, gets laid to waste with the Muslims in, I think, the 7th or 8th century AD. That's my off-the-cuff history. But anyway, the Byzantines' general problem is, it's simple. You're laying siege to a city, and imagine you have 6, 7, 8 armies camped around a very large city, and you have to decide whether to attack the city or retreat. What you know is that if all of the generals attack together in a coordinated fashion, you will win. But if 5 or 6 attack and 2 or 3 don't, or if they retreat, then the attack is doomed to failure. And here's the problem. You can't easily coordinate between the 7, 8, 9 generals because there are lines of communications, and you don't know if your messenger will reach the other generals, or they'll be waylaid along the way, they'll get lost. If all of the messengers will reach all of the generals in time, and you'll be able to coordinate your answers. And you don't know if all of the generals are even on your side. Maybe one of them is a turncoat. Maybe one of them is a traitor, doomed to turn their back on you in your time of need. So even if you get their response, you don't always know if you can trust it. And that is the Byzantine general's problem. How do you coordinate action between these 9 generals camped around a city with all of those constraints around the messaging and around trust? Can you trust all of the other generals? And that, in distributed computers, is also the problem, because you have computers distributed around a system. It takes time. There's latency in relaying messages from one to the other. Sometimes bits and bytes get lost along the way, and so the messages are corrupted by the time they get there. And sometimes the servers are faulty, or in some cases, there is a bad actor at the other end, and they can be sending mischievous messages. How do you coordinate a problem? Now, if that sounded familiar, that's essentially what nodes in a blockchain do. You have nodes spread out around the world. They have to coordinate what the next block is, and they have to reach a consensus so that they can act. If a specific portion of those generals, those nodes, reach consensus on one block, and the rest reach consensus on another block, as in some decide to attack, some decide to retreat, well, everyone's going to lose, right? You need to reach a way of reaching consensus so that even if 1 or 2 kind of betray you or just didn't get the message, the system as a whole still has enough consensus to make that coordinated attack, and in the allegory, attack the city, and in a blockchain reach consensus on what the next block is. And so when people say it's a Byzantine fault tolerant system, it means that it is a distributed computer system that is resistant to this kind of problem, the Byzantine generals issue. That's what BFT means, Byzantine Fault Tolerance. Other cool systems out there that need this, by the way, airplanes, cars, all kinds of systems that have malfunctions and CAN buses that have to coordinate with each other. By the way, in an airplane, it has to coordinate consensus in milliseconds, which is really cool. Of course, it's a centralized system, so you don't have the problem that a distributed system, definitely a decentralized distributed system has, but still very cool. And so that's what all of these systems of consensus are built around. They're built around reaching consensus in a way that is Byzantine fault tolerant. They all do it in different ways. Proof of stake does it in one way. Proof of work does it in another way. Proof of work does it through the longest chain. That's kind of all of the generals are attacking the city because all of the generals, 8 of the generals have decided to attack. That's how it works in proof of work. In proof of stake, the Tendermint paper, which is kind of one of the OG proof of stake papers, came out in 2014. It's all around the critical threshold, which is as long as a third of the nodes are not malicious or offline or malfunctioning, then the consensus mechanism is Byzantine fault tolerant. But when the number of nodes that go offline is greater than a third, that makes the system already unstable and unreliable. And so most proof of stake chains, actually, the main concern isn't a 51% attack. In my mind, it's a 33% malfunction. In Ethereum, there's a way, this is in proof of stake, there's a way to mitigate that over time through slashing. But most proof of stake chains, you have to read the kind of the fine print of, is it really 51% of nodes that have to be taken offline or just 33% of nodes that have to be taken offline? Because that completely shifts the marginal point of attack for these systems. Very important to read, by the way. And that's kind of why I like knowing the nitty-gritty details of these systems. So that's why I wanted to cover BFT, Byzantine Fault Tolerance. It's one of these OG terms that shows up in all of the original papers. It shows up in a lot of the original white papers and reference docs as well. So that was today's blockchain bite, Byzantine Fault Tolerance.